Good morning, everybody, and good afternoon or good evening, wherever you're joining today from the world in order for the baking event. I'm B. Pratyusha Channupati. I'm the McGill chapter alumni chapter president of Calgary. Thank you for joining today's cooking show with McGill executive chef Oliver Diwalpi as he guides you through the process of making a Montreal-style bagel from scratch with lox. Wherever you're in the world, you can enjoy classic Montreal flavors. Today, I want to take this moment to, just in case if you're new to the whole McGill 24 event, I want to just give you a brief history about McGill 24. I'm very pleased to announce that today, March 10th, is McGill 24. And McGill 24 is our university's one-day digital fundraising campaign. Today, we invite all the members of the McGill community to make a gift to the areas and initiatives across the university that resonate the most with you. Last year on McGill 24, McGillians raised $2.9 million on the strength of more than 5,300 donors. It was the largest fundraiser of its kind in Canadian university history. All day, McGill 24 will feature the variety of participation challenges, meaning that each dollar raised will count for more. I invite you to visit the mcgill24.ca for the real-time results of where the campaign stands and, of course, to make your own gift. Now I take the most pleasure to introduce our own executive chef, Oliver Diwalpi. Oliver Diwalpi is the executive chef for McGill Student Housing and Hospitality, and he's a proud endorser of sustainable and local foods. He has been sharing his passion with McGillians for past 12 years. Chef, here is your platform. Please go ahead.
Hey, hello from Montreal. Anyway, I want to thank you all for joining me. This is sort of my third time doing this over Zoom. This is definitely the biggest group we've done yet. So welcome everybody. When they talked about doing this course, they asked, what I thought was good, and I thought with all these alumni coming from everywhere, what brings us all back is, these famous things in Montreal. What more than a Montreal bagel? So we're going to do Montreal bagels and some lox in the sort of dead time that we have. And if you're making the recipe with me, you can live make it with me. And the only delay you're going to have over me is yours may come out 5 or 10 minutes after this, after the course is done, because I'm going to make the dough and there's a resting period. And during that resting period, I take out another dough where you have to let yours rest for 10 or 15 minutes. So when we talk about Montreal bagels, I think what comes to mind for everybody is St. Viateur or Fairmount. And McGill has been associated with St. Viateur for the past 12 years. Since the day I arrived at McGill, we said we're no longer going to serve anyone else's bagel besides a Montreal bagel. And I just wanted to say, when I told them I was doing this, I went down to St. Viateur and they sent a little word to all of you. So if we can play that video.
Welcome McGill, we love you guys. Here with hot bagels and good luck, McGill 24.
What an amazing place to go. When I've gone there with some other guests or whatever from out of town, the man in the picture, Saul, has actually thrown bagels across the room to me for us to catch and stuff like that. So we're very happy to be there with them. If that brings back some souvenirs, let's hope that this course does as well. I have my daughter here with me. She's going to be filming a few things. The ingredients that we have, you have the list, but she has a whole set of ingredients on the table here. So for the lox recipe, we have our salmon, salt and sugar. We have dill and black peppercorn and some vodka. There are some other ingredients that I'll talk about afterwards that you can add to this if you want for your own choice. And for the bagels, the recipe is not much more difficult than that. There's some poppy seeds, sesame seeds. You'll have the choice of which one you want to use. We have the flour, sugar, an egg, some maple syrup, make sure it's Canadian, salt, yeast, and a little oil. And that's the entire course I'm doing for you today. So let's start, if that's okay with you. I'm going to be doing this in a Kitchenaid mixer. So my daughter's going to show you this, but you can easily do this by hand. I'm going to show you a little bit of it as well. We're not going to go through the whole mixing process because I don't want you to be listening to a KitchenAid mixer for 10 minutes, but I'm going to show you how to make it in the mixer, and then we're going to mix some by hand, and then we're going to switch doughs just to speed this whole thing up. So if we're okay, Bea, I can get going?
Yes, Chef, please go ahead. And just as a housekeeping item for people, this meeting is getting recorded. And as well as if you have any questions, please do put it in the chat. And as we go along, Chef will answer those questions. Thank you, Chef. Please go ahead.
Wait, if we're going to inspire you a little bit, let my daughter just take a picture of the 2 bagels that just came out of the oven. And she wanted to get you bagel lox and cream cheese at the end so that you could see it done. So we just toasted 2 quickly, and you can see what they look like. If that's anything looks like St. Viator, then I've accomplished something. So let's get going. So in most times when you're making bread, you're going to proof the yeast. And we're going to do that a little bit right now, where we're going to put the yeast in with the 300, I think it's 350 grams of warm water. So warm water is basically 100 degrees, somewhere between 95 and 100. It just helps the yeast proof. So that's 350. Here's the yeast. And what we would normally do is put a little bit of sugar in there, what we have right here. And since the maple syrup is pretty much the same as sugar, we can put that in. And what we would normally do is wait 5 minutes, and we would see this yeast start to bubble and dissolve. Okay, but because we're mixing this for so long, this is a 10-minute kneading dough, and I think on the recipe it may say 10 or 12 minutes. It doesn't need to proof like that. So we're going to put in all the ingredients, and we're just going to mix it up, and we'll see what happens with the end result. It'll all be nice and smooth, and the yeast will activate perfectly with that amount of kneading. If you're making a dough that kneads only for 5 minutes, you may want to proof it beforehand. So we've just stuck in every ingredient you saw on the table besides the sesame seeds and the poppy seeds. And we're going to mix it in this KitchenAid mixer. It's going to make some noise. It's only going to be on for 20 seconds, just so you can see it start. And then I'll show you the kneading by hand. Okay. If you've done the recipe correctly, it won't even stick to the sides of this bowl in the KitchenAid mixer. As it's mixing, it'll pull off anything that's stuck on the side, and that KitchenAid mixer will come out almost clean at the end. Okay, so you have the idea. That would stay in there for 10 minutes mixing, but I'm going to show you, if you don't have a KitchenAid mixer at home, you'd mix this in a large bowl. And then you would knead it by hand. I'll give you the technique for kneading. And why does a bagel dough knead as much as that, where maybe a bread dough or a pizza dough will only knead for 5 to 8 minutes? It's because bagel doughs are known to be chewy. And that's what we're trying to get, is a dough that's gotten all the gluten out and made an elastic dough for the bagels. So this would be it. You would just knead like this for 10 minutes. You can add a little bit of flour as you go, and soon it won't take any more flour to stop sticking. So what's going to happen is this dough that is slightly yellow, I guess, from the yeast and from the maple syrup and from the egg, as you mix it more and more, is actually going to lighten in color as the flour works and the gluten comes out. So right now it's not smooth, but I'm going to show you the one that I made 30 minutes ago from the magic of Zoom. And you see how that dough is a little bit whiter, a little bit lighter in color, and very smooth. And it's a little bit bigger just because it's risen already. Now, the only thing you don't know from this dough, different from your recipe, is this dough I've already cut off 2 bagels, so I've cheated a little bit. So now, if you're making your dough at home, this is where we separate. You're going to continue kneading for the next 5-8 minutes or whatever to make a 10-minute or 12-minute kneading total, where I'm going to go on with this to make our bagels, just so we can speed up and get through the whole process today.
Chef, there are a couple of questions coming up. Can I ask them right now, if you have a minute?
Sure.
One of the questions came up is like, how much would be 350 grams of water in terms of cups?
Okay, it's exactly 350 milliliters. So a cup of water is about 230 milliliters, 240 milliliters. So it's whatever, probably a cup and a half. I think on the recipe, we may have written it down as a cup and a half, exactly.
Okay. And what would be, does the yeast need to be proofed a little bit, or directly from the fridge can be used?
It can be used directly from the fridge because of a long amount of kneading that we're doing. The yeast is going to get well incorporated and we'll have plenty of time to still activate.
And
okay?
Somebody asked this question, like, do you have any preference for any brands of flours and stuff like that? Or any brand is good brand?
I can't say, but here's a little segue into what we're doing at McGill, is we actually buy all local flour from La Milanaise, for our baking in-house. Now, we don't bake everything, but when we're doing breads and desserts, we're at least using a local flour for it.
Okay. Any local flour is good to go.
Again, when I walk into St. Viateur, I think their bags say 5 rows on it. So I don't know if it has to be local. It's just what we do at McGill. So I think any all-purpose flour would be fine for this. So this is probably the hardest thing I'm going to show you now, is making a bagel. And it really is not difficult. So if this is it, you're going to see how you can be successful. So this dough, your dough at home, would be cut in anywhere from 10 to 12. Now, I've already taken 2 bagels off of this. So if I cut this in half, I'm going to make ideally 5 out of each one of these. Okay, and that's if I've cut them in half equally. So very simple is I either cut them in half or make them a little bit bigger and just cut them into 4 or something like that. But my choice. The bagels we're making today, if you make 12, are just a slightly smaller than St. Viateur. I believe theirs are 80 to 100 grams, and these end up being about 80 grams. So a little bit on the smaller side. So let me cut them into 5. And I could weigh all of these to check that they're about equal. But the funny thing about bagels is imperfection is part of the beauty. So I say that's about right. There may be 1 or 2 that are a little bit bigger than others, but we can also adjust as we go. Okay, so like I said, this is the hardest part. You want to roll it into a log like this, or a long stick. You're going to join them, overlap them by about 1 inch or 2, and you're going to re-roll that part to smooth it out. And there's your first bagel. As you see, not perfect, but that's some of the beauty of it. And if you want to see one a little more perfect, I'll take a little bit more than a second to do it.
How long should the log be?
I guess about 10 inches, 20, 25 centimeters. So we're going to keep going like that until we have our 10 bagels made. And you at home, when you do this, so what does that look like? Almost a foot long, maybe 10 inches. When you do this, you're going to get 2 extra bagels because I've already cooked 2. And that video you saw at the beginning, that's exactly what they're doing, but they're making a dough that's exactly 20 times bigger. They're making 240 bagels at a time with their batch of dough.
Can you show the fold again?
Here's the fold. Just fold it over like that, and then that's the part you're re-rolling to seal it together and to flatten out the double fold that's there, the fold that's there.
Chef, I have a quick question. If somebody wants an egg replacement, can they use the flax seeds as part of it?
Flaxseed would be fantastic as a choice on top. I mean, the St. Vita, they're making, basically 80% of what they serve is white seed bagel, sesame seed. The other, 15% are probably poppy seed. And then that last 5% are whole wheat, plain, all dressed like that. And I think they probably put in flaxseed into the all dressed bagel.
Oh, okay. As an egg replacement as well, can they use flax seeds if they're vegan?
Oh, instead of the egg. Yeah, I made the recipe without egg, so you could definitely use that flaxseed mixture with the water to replace it, and you can always also do it without any egg at all.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And remember, the egg represents basically, there's one egg here for 12 bagels, so you're getting 1/12 of an egg. It's really not that impactful on the recipe. I'm just following the exact recipe from St. Vita. Now, I'm finished here. Look at this one. This one will shrink a little bit smaller. And if it doesn't, we'll have one with a very large hole. Now, these bagels are going to go onto a pastry pan. They're going to go onto a pastry pan. They're going to sit for a few minutes as I boil some water. And you have the recipe for that too. Basically, the water is, 4, 5, 6 liters of water. And I put in 350 grams of either not maple syrup. You can use maple syrup. Either honey or brown sugar. I don't think the recipe says brown sugar. If you want to save a little bit of money, put brown sugar in there. There's no problem. So as I said, that was the hardest part of your course today, was forming these bagels. And now we're going to let those sit just like that for 5, 8 minutes or something like that, just the time it takes the water to boil. And once the water is simmering, we're going to put them in 45 seconds each side, flip them over once, put them back onto the pastry pan with either sesame seeds or poppy seeds or both, and then they're going right in the oven. So that whole recipe from beginning to end, even with the rest time that you didn't see with the dough initially, is under an hour. You can have bagels in the morning. So now I'm going to have you veer over to the other side of my kitchen here, and we're going to be doing a lox recipe. I'm going to slide you over here. And the lox recipe, one of the easier ones around as well. I mean, lox can't be confused for smoked salmon. Smoked salmon is basically the same recipe, but they're smoking it once it's been marinated. We're just marinating these. It's a traditional, I guess, more Jewish way of eating salmon is lox than smoked salmon, but both are great. If you have a smoker at home, you could be using a very similar recipe to what I'm doing. And after a little bit less than the 48 hours, probably after 36 hours, you would then smoke it. That's it, cold smoke it. So what do we need for the lox recipe? I bought this full fillet of salmon. You can do it with any size you want. The smaller you're using, probably the less time that it's going to take to marinate. So right now I have this one with skin on, and I have one that's marinated and already been in the salt and sugar, cured in the fridge. It has no skin on it. So you can do it either way. And if I wanted, I could do 2 pieces this big. I could even do 1 piece if I really want. It's just on its own, it's going to take a little bit more salt and sugar to cover the whole thing. The idea is you're covering the whole fillet. So let's get this started, and you'll see each step. It came up that there may be some questions that you want to look at.
Yeah, sure. Somebody asked, when you chose the salmon, what do you look for in it? How much is the freshness and stuff like that? The quality has a huge impact.
So Myself, I'll just tell you what I do is I'm first of all buying always Canadian salmon. I think my uncle, who's alumni, may be on this call. He may be having a little bit of a heart attack because he's a big proponent of wild salmon as opposed to farmed. This is a farmed salmon from the East Coast, and that's the same one that we're using at McGill. It's supposed to be more ecologically friendly, where they're doing a lot of stuff with seaweed and mussels and stuff to try and keep the water clean. I'm going to leave the salmon choice to you, but yes, you want to have a fresh salmon. So you need to ask about that question. I would say try and avoid probably grocery stores unless you see that they're turning over a lot or they have a big fish section. Ask the same questions as you would if you're doing sushi or something like that. This one, like I said, I bought at Metro. It was on sale this week. I see they're having a big turnover. There's salmon all over the place, so they're ordering in a lot of it, and I can see the fillet myself. And like I said, I bought it yesterday afternoon, and we're going to be marinating it now, and I have no worry about this whatsoever.
Okay. And somebody asked, is there no salt in the bagel? Is it a personal or it's a preference?
I made a mistake when I threw in the ingredients. There is salt and sugar in the recipe. The recipe has 8 grams of salt, and I think it's 60 grams of sugar. And I just threw the two in the opposite order as I sort of told you. Okay,
great. And somebody asked how much would be the 40 grams of oil would be? That is 2 tablespoons.
Yeah, so 2 tablespoons of oil would be about 20 grams.
And is there a preference for the oil? Because somebody asked.
It's my mistake. It would be about 40 grams.
40 grams, okay.
We're just using vegetable oil.
Vegetable oil, no olive oil or any other oils.
Okay, so let me do the recipe. This is the easiest thing. This is just coarse salt. What you see in there a little bit pink is I have some pink Himalayan pink salt, and it just sort of breaks up the rest, but it's just coarse salt. This is the, I believe it to be 8 ounces, 1 cup or whatever of coarse salt, the same amount of sugar, and the recipe sometimes can be as much as 2 to 1 salt to sugar. I've chosen this recipe. It's just the one I like best. Those 2 ingredients just get mixed, and in that, we're going to throw the coarse ground peppercorns. And that's the whole saumure, the marinade for this recipe. So the recipe's already half done. I'm going to now demonstrate. This again is a whole salmon fillet, and we're going to cut it in half to make 2 parts, and this is going to marinate the size it is and everything like that 48 hours. If you have something that's thinner or something without skin, it's probably close to 36 hours that you want to marinate it. You'll be able to feel it by touch. When it's getting firm, that's where you want to take it off. And the more you've done it, the more you're going to know how much you want to marinate it. So I want it to be about here. That's one piece. This is the other piece, and I've chosen not to have the tail on. We're going to use that for other stuff tonight, just because it's going to over-marinate with the salt. And then this mixture, it probably tells you to put like a third down in. You just want to have some on the bottom. You want to cover it like that. I have dill here that I'm putting in between the 2 layers because I really like that taste of dill in there, but nothing stops you from using a different fresh herb. Dill is a traditional thing. And then I'm covering it again with salt, the salt mixture. The next salmon fillet is going on top of that, and the rest is going on top of it. And what's going to happen is halfway through, so after 24 hours, I'm just going to flip these. And that way all the edges are going to have a chance to get marinated. And what the salt does is it draws out the humidity from the salmon. So you're going to start seeing water or liquid at the bottom of this. And it's not the vodka that I'm putting in. It really is all the humidity from the salmon. And that's what cooks it. So as it goes longer and longer, you're going to have like a very salty liquid that's going to continue marinating the salmon. And then I asked for a 1/4 cup of vodka, and it just adds to the taste. So that's about it. Now, some people, just so you know, will use things like juniper berries, will use star anise in there. Some will even put in some lemon wedges or orange wedges. I think all are fine. This is the basic recipe for me. And now we're going to cover this with saran wrap.
Can you use a different alcohol?
Yes, definitely. I've used gin before. You don't have to use any alcohol if it's a problem with diet or religion or anything like that. I would stay away from colored alcohols because you don't want to discolor the salmon. And then the only thing that we're going to do extra is we're going to put a little bit of a weight on it. Just to make sure that it's all being well marinated. So I'm going to put that in the fridge with something on top, and it's going to sit for, as I said, 24 hours. Then I'm going to take it out. I'm going to flip them and then put it back in for the other 24 hours.
Chef, there is a question. What kind of salmon are you using right now? Is it sockeye salmon or spring salmon?
As I said, you can do this with any salmon. You can even do this with trout. With trout, I'm going to say probably the whole marinating process is going to be somewhere between 12 and maybe 18 hours. So like half a day to 3/4 of a day, maybe one full day if you have a large trout fillet. But all these fish are fine to do this with. There's no issue whatsoever. This is an Atlantic salmon, a farmed Atlantic salmon. And
is there a reason that there is skin left on one side of the salmon? Is it on purpose, or it gives an extra taste or anything?
It slows down the curing process a little bit, just so you know. But no, it makes it easier for me to slice it off, and it's keeping a little bit more of the fat that may come off when you're trimming off that skin. But when you go to slice it, you're actually going to slice through, and the knife is going to have resistance on the skin. So it makes it easier for you to slice when the skin is on. That's why we leave it on. The other ones that I have, that I'm going to show you in a minute, don't have the skin on. So it can be done either way. It's not that big a game changer.
Okay, great. Thank you.
We're going to take a break from the gravlax for a minute to go back to the bagels because we're ready to do the last steps on this, okay?
Okay.
So our bagels have been sitting here for 10 minutes and maybe even a couple minutes more. And we're going to now poach them in this sweet water. So what's in here? I put in half honey and half brown sugar. And depending on what you have at home, you may only be able to do 4 at a time, but that's 3 batches for a minute and a half. It doesn't take very long to do. So they stay 45 seconds like that, flip them over, 45 seconds on the other side, and then we take them off. And if you are doing this at the same time as me, you probably are catching up to me at this moment with yours, where your dough is probably rested and you're starting to form bagels. That's great. I would say turn on your oven to preheat, 425 degrees. Okay, so there's 45 seconds on one side, and then we flip them over. You can do this many ways. I just have this nice tool to do it with, but you could easily be doing this with a stick as well, right in the hole to turn it over. Now, I know this sounds like a little bit of downtime. Again, we're watching bagels poach, but I'm going to be talking to you in a minute about the farm. Maybe Bea wants to weigh in with what's going on at Mac Farm these days.
Sure, I can go ahead. One of the questions just came up before I start that is like, is the water simmering or boiling?
It's just simmering. As you see, almost no bubbles at this moment, but it was boiling before. It's simmering. I mean, you want to bring it to a boil and then you want to reduce it down to sort of low or medium low.
Okay. And one more question came up is like, what speed did you use the Kitchenaid on for mixing the dough?
Yeah. So you want to start it all the time, not very fast. Otherwise, you're going to have flour fly all over the place. But then once it's going and you have a dough in there, you probably want to put it somewhere around 5 or something like that. You don't want it full speed because it's going to force that motor an awful lot on the Kitchenaid. And there's no real advantage. You're not really kneading it any faster. It's probably going to be rolling it around the bowl more than it's needed. But you are the best judge of that. If your mixer has a little bit more dough, a little bit less dough, it may change the speed a little bit. I'm sorry, I should be talking over here to you.
No, that's okay. And that's great. I think we answered most of the questions, and any questions we did not get, we will get back to them a bit later. As Chef said, I have graduated from McGill McDonald campus in Master of Plant Science in 2013. I had the great pleasure to work on the farms around the country. And right now I'm taking care of regulatory affairs for a startup company, which is an ag and food biotech. For me, it's personally a lot. It's very close to my heart because Canadian food products are really highly regarded in terms of safety around the world. And McDonald campus is doing the same, like producing wonderful food and produce on the campus. And I know that Chef Oliver uses them for our own residency, housing meals and stuff like that. So Chef, can you touch base more on it and also talk about the nutritional classes you do on that as well? That would be great.
Okay, so since 2009, when I came in, we started a relationship with McDonald campus. And again, I talk about that uncle who's alumni, he's probably on this call, who made the introduction between me and Mike Blejo, who's in that photo. And in 2009, the question came up was, what are we doing? What is MAC producing for the downtown campus? And in 2009, absolutely nothing. So we went from doing nothing together to having a project that today is called McGill Feeding McGill, where most of our produce, our biggest produce supplier for August, September, October is McDonald campus. And I tell everyone, the best tomatoes you're ever going to be eating comes from McDonald campus. The watermelons, the cantaloupe, those apples that you're seeing, peppers, we're so rewarded by the quality of the produce that's there. And students are eating peppers and onions and melons, like I said, that come out of MAC campus that were picked the day before, and they're eating it the day after it's been picked. These are students that are working out on the campus. That is the fields that you see on the campus. I'm just going to turn these bagels or take these bagels off. And like I said, it's the one thing that we've been recognized absolutely the most for sustainability is this relationship with this ultra local supplier, Mac Farm, and what they produce. We meet in the month of March and we discuss what are the volumes we're going to need. And this group of farmers and these students that are doing this do this incredible job and produce these incredible products that we're so lucky to be using in the downtown campus. And from there, it's developed where we're using eggs from the farm as well. We use a little bit of beef that comes from there. So residency has definitely changed over the last 10 years.
I would definitely add that, Chef. And one of the things, if you're ever once this COVID is done and when it's safe to travel, you can go and visit the Mac Market and as well as the farm. Mike Blejo and his team are more than happy.
I'll talk to you about that in a second. I just want to show you one of these bagels. So these have come out of the water. They don't need to sit like that, but they have sat for a few minutes. I'm just putting on the seed. So we're going to do half poppy seed and half sesame seed. If you don't like the quantity I'm putting on there, which is more, you can sprinkle it on like that. I like this excessive amount, and remember, what falls off as it's being tossed around and cut and stuff like that. But what a beautiful thing it is, covered in these seeds like that.
Can you dip it in anything else?
Of course, we talked about, Montreal bagel seasoning. We've talked about, onions or garlic or something like that. And the same recipe would be used if you were making, something like a cinnamon raisin, so you'd be using the same one, but put out a little bit of cinnamon and raisin to roll the dough in just before you poach them. So those will be ready in 20 minutes, and then I hope to be finishing this whole session with bagels, with the lox that we're about to slice, and some cream cheese and like that. So let's move back over to our lox here.
Chef, before we do that, somebody is asking if you can show how you're dipping the whole thing into the sesame seeds and stuff like that. They want to see apparently.
Well, I just finished doing it, so I don't have another bagel to show you.
I'm sorry. Okay.
No, but the wet bagel that's come out of the out of the water, the boiling water, it's going to be a little bit stickier because of the boiling water. It creates a little bit of a crust, but it's still a soft bagel dough, and it's a little sticky. And then when you take this and you just drop it in the sesame seeds or poppy seeds or whatever, it's going to pick up an awful lot of them. So that's the way I was doing it. I did show you one where I sprinkled it on as well.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
So back to the lox. So here we go. Now, here's what you need to do with them. Once they're finished marinating, after 48 hours, you want to rinse this off. And it may seem like a waste, but that's what needs to happen. You don't want to be eating coarse salt or big peppercorns. It doesn't matter if there's a little bit left. So that little bit of pepper that's left stuck there is fantastic. The dill that's left there is fantastic. So that's what it looks like. And sorry, I should have shown you what it would look like to just rotate these. Quite easy is you would take it from here, you put this one back in the bottom, put this one back on top, and that's it. So there's our lox. And I'm just going to pat it dry.
It looks a lot more firm now.
For sure, than what we started with. This one may be slightly over marinated because, again, no skin. And it sat for just under 48 hours. It probably should have been 36 hours because of the no skin, but we're going to know when we taste it if it's a little bit on the salty side. I'd be surprised though if it's too much. And then for slicing, the traditional way of doing it, remember you're going to have skin underneath in most cases, is you're going to slice like this, and at some point you're going to hit the skin, and the skin is going to deflect you up. So it makes it easy to make these nice small slices. And in the recipe, I've asked you to save some of your dill until the end. So you can sprinkle on a little bit more if you want. So look how nice that is. I'm going to just actually lay this down so it doesn't move around because of the moisture on the paper towel. And for myself, I'm going to slice it this way. Not quite as good for the camera maybe, but. And now if Kayla wants to bring over her bagels, we're going to be able to set this up. But look how nice that is. And let me give it a taste. It actually tastes like absolutely perfect. If I could have taken out 2 hours earlier, it probably would have been a little bit better. But this with some, again, fresh dill, with a little bit of pepper, with cream cheese or something like that. Wow. So let me show you. And then to slice it thin like that, it's just technique. But look how nice that looks. It looks almost like a smoked salmon, and all that's missing is a smoky flavor from it. What am I going to get? Oh, so we have a little bit of fresh dill. You want to film that, Kayla? So look at that bagel. Nice little piece of fresh dill on that. You can put on capers, you can put on onions or anything else. And look what we've created in 1 hour. Now, yes, I know your salmon's marinating for 2 days, but it took you 15 minutes to make it. Okay? So I'm here now for you for questions or anything else. I'm going to slice up the rest of the salmon in the next few minutes so that we have it for our next few days here at home. But any questions you have, the bagels are going to be coming out of the oven in maybe 10 more, 12 more minutes or something like that. And you're going to be able to see our batch of bagels. And if you're making these simultaneous as I am at home, you should be poaching your bagels now or something like that already.
Chef, like a few questions came up, like if somebody wants to make mini bagels, is the baking time going to be the same, or do they need to use something else?
So I'd raise the temperature and I would cut the time. The reason to raise the temperature is the bagel, it will probably be cooked through in 12 to 14 minutes instead of 16 to 18 minutes. but it won't be any more brown necessarily. So raise it to 450 and cut the baking time to 12 minutes or something like that.
And somebody's asking, what is the difference between lox and gravlax?
Well, gravlax is
That's
the
it.
real name for it. Lox is just a shortened name for it.
Okay, that's
So
good
you
to
can make
know.
gravlax with anything. Trout gravlax and salmon. Salmon is the most traditional. Trout is well known. Some people do it with still some other fish.
And somebody's asking, do we need to toast the sesame seeds before dipping them in the bagel?
No, you don't, because they're going to be in the oven for almost 20 minutes and cooking there. Now, the only part I forgot to tell you about the bagels, in about, 2-3 minutes, we're going to go in and we're going to flip them over. The same way you saw them flipping them at St. Viator's with that long wood spatula. Well, we're going to go in and flip them over probably by hand.
Okay, great. And somebody's asking, would it not be advantageous to bake on a stone, maybe some steam?
It would be interesting for sure. I have a pizza stone, but I could probably only fit, 6 bagels at a time. I've never tried it. So I could only say, yeah, please go ahead and try it.
Okay.
I think it could come out to a really great result.
Somebody
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, please.
Somebody is saying that they tried to make Montreal bagels before and they had problem when they deflated in between boiling and the baking, but they tasted good.
They probably didn't. They probably did 2 things wrong. A lot of recipes that are out there are going to say, once you've finished your dough and you've rolled it out, let them rise for like a half an hour when they're in a bagel shape. That's way too long. If you saw that, again, that video from St. Viator, because we're trying to make Montreal bagels here, they put out maybe 50 on the table. The time that they roll out 50, they put those 50 into the boiling water. So the first thing is you don't want the bagel dough to rise too much before it goes in the boiling water. And then if they've really done 45 seconds aside, it should keep it firm enough that you can handle this. You shouldn't be playing with them, but you can handle them enough to dip them in the sesame seeds or poppy seeds. No problem.
And
I would say it's probably a question of letting it rise too much.
okay, that's good to know. And after the bagels are boiled, how long they can sit before baking? That's a common question.
I wouldn't leave them any time. I would say the time to boil 12 bagels, if you need to do it in 3 batches because your pot is smaller than my pan, that's fine. That's a total of maybe 4.5 minutes. No problem. But I definitely wouldn't be leaving them for 15 minutes because you have uncooked dough that's in the middle of that. And if you've handled it too much, you may have a problem with it, again, deflating, even though it hasn't risen too much.
That's great.
Let me just flip these over. And
Yeah.
take a look.
You can show quickly how you did this without actually physically dipping it.
Sure.
I know they're hard.
So if I was to go to dip one of these again, I would just take it like this and I would dip it in. And it's not picking up now because it's already dried on the outside. Any water from the poaching is already dried up. So those should be ready now in 6-7 more minutes. So I did want to finish with the farm and the stuff we're doing in sustainability and give you a few invites. If you're ever down at McGill or downtown campus and you want to see what one of these residences look like, I think that they've shared my email, or they will share my email. Send me a note and I'll be happy to tour you around one of the residences so you can see what it looks like these days. And trust me, you're not eating like you used to eat. Student will come in, they'll have choices of sushi and salad bar, meals of the day, paninis and pizzas made to order, pasta made to order. They'll go to the grill where they'll have beef burger, chicken burger, vegetarian burger, but they'll have steaks at night and things like that. It's an incredible amount of choice that they're having these days with quality food. And then the other one I wanted to say is, if you're going to be in town and you want to see this farm that I've talked so highly about, I wouldn't go visit the farm in May and I wouldn't go visit it in December or through the winter. But if you're there somewhere between, June, July, and especially August, September, October, I would say take a walk out there. Mike Blejo, who is the manager, the horticulture technician, will be happy to show you around. If you're a larger group or something, I'd be happy to join you out there and take a walk around. During the season, I go out there once a week just for my own inspiration, for my own mental health, if you want. An incredible opportunity we have is being McGillers, McGillians, being able to use that farm and see it.
Chef, thank you for those words. I know that people are asking, can we buy on the farm? I remember when I was a student, I could buy it from Mac Market. Is it still the case?
So the Mac Market during the season, so somewhere around mid-August, it opens up, and they do a few things. They open up every day except Sunday, I believe, to sell the produce that they have, but they also do Friday market baskets, which is a mixture of a bunch of stuff that they have that they're putting in a bag for $20 and is an incredible deal. So either one of those options exists. If you're there, you're passing by St. Anne de Bellevue and it's August or September, stop by and you'll just see what they have in the actual market building. But the walking around the farm is, to me, the highlight.
That's great. And one of the questions regarding the bagel came up is like, instead of white flour, if they can replace it with whole wheat flour, and if they can, what's the ratios?
So my wife got mad at me because I didn't make whole wheat bagels for her while I was doing this, but I just said I didn't have time to do everything. But I would say you want to probably stay away from making 100% whole wheat. I've tried many times with pizza dough and bread doughs and stuff like that, and I've never been very successful where it becomes heavy, it becomes dense. But I would say you would be, with no issue, 50-50 ratio in the flour of whole wheat to white flour would be absolutely fine. And you do all the same steps. And the only thing I can think of is it may take, 2 or 3 more minutes of sitting time or rising time to get the same result as with just white flour, just because the whole wheat is a little bit denser, a little bit heavier.
That's good to know. Somebody wants to know, how do you guys deal in the kitchen with allergies such as peanuts? Hey, Kayla.
So Kayla, my daughter, has been filming. She's trying out the bagels now. So I guess again, thumbs up from a McGill student.
Second half, they're very good. Very good.
So there's a future alumni right there.
Great. That's great. We got to see Kayla as usual. One of the things wanted to ask, how do you deal with the allergies such as peanuts in the kitchen?
Yeah, so we have a big challenge with that because there's so many things going on now. But probably about 8-9 years ago, we just eliminated all nuts from the kitchen. We just don't have them. You may have nuts in the dining hall that you can purchase, but they'll be pre-wrapped. They'll be coming from outside. We do have a nut bar. They'll be separate where they don't even get delivered into the kitchen. So there's no cross-contamination that happens in the kitchen. And we walk through with students to tell them, what they have to be aware of. And we've had no real issues of anaphylactic or nut allergies. But think about all the things going on with gluten-free, with allergic to garlic, allergic to dairy or dairy-free, or all these things. And it's becoming more and more challenging. And we're trying just to keep up with the demands from students about all the dietary needs that they have.
That's good to know. I completely understand how much of a challenge it can be when you're trying to avoid cross-contaminations. The other thing I wanted to ask you is, it has been quite a number of years you're at McGill. What is your most memorable moment?
We've been lucky. Food service has been this sort of poster child for the last, 10 years or something like that. And we've done a lot of fun things. We now do an event at the beginning of every year that is my highlight. That is, we call it McGill a la carte, where we bring in, 30, 40 suppliers, and they give out samples to students and to anyone who's there, just free samples of all the stuff that they're going to be seeing during the year. So the kombucha supplier will be there, the yogurt supplier will be there. They'll hand a yogurt to everyone, a granola bar to everyone, a kombucha sample to everyone, like that, and 30, 40 times. So when you walk through there, you've had more than a meal. But normally during that same event, we do something that's trying to highlight one of the things that we're doing on campus, one of our accomplishments or one of our goals. So we've done the world record for the biggest fruit salad, that we took most of the fruits from McDonald campus, 12,000 pound fruit salad, of which we donated 8,000 pounds to local charities and missions. We broke another world record for the world's largest fair trade brownie, 4,400 pounds, 32 feet by 16 feet. brownie, all made with fair trade sugar or fair trade chocolate and fair trade cocoa. And then again, missions and to the students that were there. So those sort of things are probably the highlight for me. But we're just very happy, fortunate to be working in that kind of environment that we are at McGill.
And I remember you also did a huge tomato cake as well, right?
Well, we were highlighting the farm that year. So we did a tomato festival where it was a 5-course tomato meal when you walked around the tent with nachos and salsa, tomato pizza, gazpacho. I don't even remember what the other recipes were, but a tomato cake was one of them for sure.
That's great. One of the participants is asking, have you ever tried making the bagels with alternative flours like spelt or gluten-free or other things?
I have to admit I haven't. Listen, I'm not the bagel expert. I make these at home. We do some fun little things once in a while at work, but we're buying our bagels from St. Peter just because why try and beat the person who's doing it the best out there?
Somebody wanted to know, how did you bake a brownie that big?
Well, we actually assembled it that big there. We baked, I think it was 260 sheets of brownies. Each sheet is probably about 2.5 feet by 20 inches or something like that. And we assembled it with a fair trade icing, 2 layers thick. So it was probably about this thick. And like I said, 32 feet by 16 feet, covered in fair trade chocolate with a fair trade logo, a McGill logo, all those things in the middle of it. If you just type in McGill brownie online, you're going to see photos of it.
Great. That's good. Somebody is asking, can we freeze these bagels once?
Absolutely. Once they're cooked, I hand them out to neighbors, but we'll freeze 4 or 5 of them so that we can take them out as we go. I've never tried freezing them, but if I wanted to do a fresh bagel, really fresh from almost scratch, I wanted to freeze it, I would poach them, and then I would stick it right in the freezer on the cookie sheet and then try and take it out and cook it again. But a cooked bagel, no problem to stick it in the freezer like that and pull it out a few days later.
Somebody is asking, maybe this is a new work, maybe we need to assign you. Is there a McGill recipe book?
I'm sorry about that. There isn't a McGill recipe book. And I think that, the days of recipe books are slowly coming to an end. I don't think we're doing anything that's incredible, but we're trying to copy the best models out there. We're trying to be the best imitator of the people that are doing things the best out there. I don't claim to make the best burger for sure, but we're taking a Quebec beef, we're cooking it fresh to order, we're putting it on a bun that's coming from one of our suppliers, locally. They're dressing it with all these things, and then they're letting the students garnish it with a whole garnish bar if you want. So again, it's not to make the best, but it's to try and imitate the best.
That's good to know. Somebody is asking, can you suggest any special instructions for using a convection oven?
So the convection oven is it's the same process. This is a convection oven, but I've chosen to put it without convection because I'm looking for a little bit more direct heat to give the bagels, I guess, some color. I've done it both ways. I haven't noticed a big difference. The true advantage of convection is it's making much more even cooking. But I guess a bagel, you want to see some parts that are a little bit whiter, a little bit darker on it. And that's why I just chose to do it without the convection today. But nothing changes.
Okay, that's good to know. And somebody is asking, can you freeze the dough before shaping it into bagels?
Right. So any dough, pizza dough, bread dough, or anything, you can. What's going to happen is when you take it out, that yeast is going to be just a little less powerful than it was before it went in the freezer. So your rising times and stuff like that may take a couple of extra minutes or even as much as maybe an hour. People buy frozen pizza dough. They'll take it out. They think it's wonderful. And the only thing I can say is bring it up to room temperature and give it that chance to rise. And probably just bring it up to room temperature is already enough then to use it straight into the oven. But bagels would be the same thing. I would just say that once you have it frozen, you may not want to freeze the big dough like this. You may want to freeze the individual bagel shapes, and then it would just it would defrost for whatever it is, 15, 20 minutes. It would go into the boiling water and then go into the oven.
Okay, that's good to know. And somebody is asking, are you working with McDonald's food science or nutrition department?
Yeah, so we work with them a little bit. We do some things together. I do get a chance to teach one course on food production. It's basically transforming fresh produce from the farm for nutrition students. They need to see, that not everything is coming in a bag or coming in a box. So we get, peppers and kale and onions and things like that. And I transform this with nutrition students into something that food service wants to have. So we'll grill peppers and then they'll freeze the grilled peppers, because us at McGill, we actually buy some grilled peppers, and we'll take the kale and wash it and blanch it and then freeze it, because we buy frozen kale to make smoothies. So that's what we're doing in that course.
That's great. That's good to know. And as you know, like Canadian wheat has been highly regarded for pastas and every baked goods around the world. And especially Europe imports quite a bit of our Canadian wheat as well. So I'm glad that you have chosen the local ingredient, which highlights today.
Perfect. So it's been so nice being here with you. I think that what I'm going to just leave with is anyone who wants to ask questions and come on video and ask because they have questions about these bagels or just other culinary questions, we're going to be around for about 15 minutes at the end of this. For all the rest of you, thank you for coming. Thanks, great, you're alumni and participating in this. It was really a pleasure doing it. Stick around if you want. I'll be here for 15 more minutes.
We had about 266 people joined us from around the world today. This is the first time for a virtual event, at least I was hosting, that I got to see these many people for a cooking event, and everybody enjoyed it. I know there are so many people behind the scenes who did make this happen. I would like to take a minute to say thank you to them, the IT department, Stuart and Jonathan, and the McGill Alumni Association Advancement Center, Dahlia, Rula, and everybody else. And I just wanted to take a minute to also you guys to recognize that this event is actually a McGill sustainable event. And I hope you guys had a great time, and make sure to visit mcgill24.ca today and make your gift for whichever cause you think is closer to your heart.
B, can I just show you the bagels before we go?
Yeah, sure. That would be great. People are still here. We have 218 people still on the line.
So they're probably missing one more minute of cooking to get that extra little bit of color, but don't those look beautiful?
I think we need a spotlight.
Of course, we're going to leave them in for a couple more minutes just to finish.
I think we need a spotlight, like maybe the IT guys are looking into it to show the bagels.
My daughter's taken out one. The rest are still in the oven for maybe one more minute just to get a little more color.
That looks amazing.
Good. Anyway, I hope that yours turn out the same way. Thank you, guys.
And I wanted to take a minute to thank your daughter, Kayla, for doing all the videography. It has been great pleasure to have you. And one of the things I love with the chef is he always brings his family and he does the cooking together. That's how kids learn about food and food ingredients. So make sure you do the same wherever you are. I don't see any other questions, but we are here. I'm still, everybody wanted to know if the recording is available later. Yes, the recording will be available later on the McGill website at the virtual events. That's where it's going to get posted. Just give another 24 to 48 hours before it gets posted, and you can go back and look at it. And somebody is asking, instead of sugar or honey to substitute, if they want to substitute for honey, how much sugar can they use?
In the recipe or in the water?
In the water.
Yeah, so in the water, you can substitute it completely. At St. Vita, they're using honey. I used a mixture of brown sugar and honey, but it's more for the taste of the crust and the way it's forming on the crust. But there's no difference between the two. For the aspect, there'll be a little bit of flavor difference. That's it.
One of the questions came up is, what's the difference between a Montreal bagel and a New York bagel?
Listen,
Montreal's better.
Exactly. There's no question Montreal is better. I think that, from what I saw last from New York bagels, a lot of the time you're still getting a bagel that they're punching a hole out of as opposed to forming it. But I think it's just a whole different aspect. What we're doing that really is special here is we're taking this, we're still cooking them in these wood burning ovens. We're still doing this on these tables that are right in front of you. And, we're still doing it the traditional way. We're not trying to cut a corner with this. So I'm sure people in New York are making Montreal style bagels now that are as good or almost as good as ours, but it's because they've copied us.
Oh, wow. That's good to know. One of the questions is coming up is like the dough is sticky, and when they're trying to roll the dough for the ropes, how do they do it if the dough is so sticky?
If it's that sticky, somewhere along the lines, they've just mismeasured something a little bit. It should be firm enough, but put a little bit more flour down on the table. You don't want too much because you don't want the dough to slide instead of rolling your dough out. You want it to roll, so it needs to have some traction on the table. But for sure, a little bit more flour. And if you need to knead it for 1 minute before, it'll get the gluten and the to get back elastic, and it'll have less tendency of sticking.
Somebody came up with this question asking, like, if you have any good way to make other Montreal classic food like smoked meat at home.
Yeah. So we went to do a cooking demo at another university one time, and we tried to make smoked meat there. And I'll just say it came out great, but it still doesn't compare to the Lessers and the Schwartzes here. So I'm not the best one to do that. We also have Schwartz come in twice a year to serve smoked meat to the students. And what they're making is still something spectacular, where they're drying this meat. So a brisket that starts, at 5 kilos ends at 3 kilos with them or something like that. So it just intensifies all that flavor. It really is something else. I'm trying to think of, Montreal classics. Well, we do Poutine Day for sure. So we're trying to do some of these things. But again, Montreal's this culinary mecca, and it's hard to compete with some of the great recipes and great institutions out there.
That's good to know. And somebody wants to know, why did you not use the bread flour for like making bagels today?
The bread flour?
Yeah.
Yeah, you absolutely can. I have a little bit in there because I was going to make a pizza dough today to eat pizza tomorrow, since I have all of the equipment out and flour on the table already. And that's probably the only reason. I wanted you to use something you had easily available at home, which was just all-purpose flour.
So they can use bread flour as well.
And you're going to have a bagel that's a little bit more chewy, exactly what you're looking for, because a little bit more gluten is in there, to make it a little bit more elastic dough.
Is it important to sift the flour before for better kneading by any chance?
No, I mean, these days the flours could just come out already, so good. If you have your flour at home for, 6 months and you haven't used it, it's always good to sift it. But this isn't pastry where you need to, separate the flour doughs. It's being kneaded and mixed for 10 or 12 minutes. It really isn't an issue to sift flour.
Cool. I think Kayla has brought on the first big batch.
Yeah. So we're going to be eating 24 bagels on the next day because we have those 2 batches going. So
that sounds good. That sounds like you're all sorted for next week. So there are like more requests for other sessions, like if you would be willing to do. Maybe we can do a poll which one, and then we will see availability of the chef, and we will definitely try to. I know he's a very busy man, but we will try to arrange something else maybe a bit later.
Dee, it's been a pleasure doing this with you. We did gingerbread with Calgary. We did pizza with Toronto, and here we're doing bagels and lox with everybody else. It really is a pleasure. No problem.
Yeah, definitely. And it would be great maybe one day when you can go back into the McGill kitchen and do it, and such that people can see the facility too.
You're doing this from my place because I won't have to be wearing a mask during this whole thing if I did it at work. So.
Yeah, no, I think we don't have any more questions at this point. There was only one question. My bagels did not float in the water, sank instead. What should I do?
I'm going to say, was your water simmering? If your water's only hot, they're going to have a tendency of dropping to the bottom before they start poaching. And because of that, the yeast makes bubbles and they'll rise to the top. They'll start floating because of that. But there's no reason for them to stay at the bottom the whole time unless the water is not hot enough.
Great. Thank you. And how long can you leave a baked bagel in the freezer? Maximum time, they're asking.
I think if you have a good freezer, I think you have no problem for, a month before you start worrying about, freezer burn and things like that. But it really depends. If you have a freezer that stays, at minus 18 or minus 16 degrees and is quite consistent and the door's not opening all the time, you'll have no problem. We put things in the freezer, that are well wrapped for, 2, 3, 4 months, and then we'll still be eating it. So.
Somebody is asking how old can the packaged yeast be used, but I'm assuming it might have an expiry date on the...
If you're unsure of your yeast, it's very, very simple. Is proof it before you do your whole recipe. So you're putting it in the warm water, you're putting in the sugar, and after 4 or 5 minutes, you should start seeing it foam up, bubble up. And if it's not, then you need to get other yeast.
And somebody wants to know, what is your recommendation on a good cream cheese that can be purchased at a grocery store?
What we have here, is Philadelphia, but no, I prefer Liberty, but that's just my choice. My kids like the whipped one. And for anyone who wants to do whipped cream cheese, it's very simple. It's buy regular cream cheese, stick it in your food processor with a tiny bit of cream and whatever herb or any flavoring you want. If it's black pepper, if it's dill, if it's onion, you stick it in there and you have whipped cream cheese after, 30, 40 seconds. So I think either one it's a taste thing.
Okay, that's good to know. And somebody is saying after they boiled their bagels, they're coming apart. Was there a secret to rolling?
No, you saw how easy it is. And it's not because I have any great technique. I've made, a few hundred bagels in my life. I haven't made thousands. And it's just because it's easy to do. It's something like if you played with plasticine or anything like that, you're going to have no problem. You roll it into a nice long log or stick. You stick the two ends together, and then you roll it to join those two ends together and get it sort of equal to the same form as the rest. But you saw some of mine were off shape, and that's what makes these bagels great.
And practice also makes it perfect as we go along. Yeah. Somebody has a question, Kayla? Go ahead.
Oh, no. Oh, sorry. I just saw someone.
We saw
with their hand.
Eve's hand up. That's why.
Oh, sorry. I think she wanted secret to rolling. That was her question, basically. So we don't have any more questions coming up at this moment. So I think it's time to wrap up because we are only 3 minutes away from our time. But thank you, Chef, again. It has been wonderful, as usual. Like, you do a great job. And people have truly enjoyed. I got so many messages saying thank you.
I appreciate it and all the work you guys do.
And thank you to you and as well as your daughter. It's great that she has been able to participate as well. And as I said, all the supporting staff behind the scenes, and they will be posting this recorded event on the McGill website, maybe like within the next 48 hours. I'm just I know they're super busy and has been trying to keep up with all the events. There are other events going on, like it's going to start in another 45 minutes with Dr. Joe Schwartz as well. He's a great guy. I would definitely say if you have time, please do check out his event as well. And there's a comedy event as well happening. And Calgary is also putting an event together this evening around 4 p.m. MST, Mountain Standard Time, a guided meditation. If you haven't enrolled for it, please do as well. And before I say goodbye to everybody, please make sure to visit mcgill24.ca and make any donations as much as possible today. And thank you. Thank you for participating today. I truly enjoyed hosting this event along with Chef. And looking forward to meeting you guys either virtually or in person once the COVID is done through other events. Thank you and have a wonderful day today.